Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. We'll get started in just a minute or so as we wait for other attendees to arrive, so please stand by. All right, good day, everyone. Thank you for attending our webinar, Course Correction for Conjoint Analysis. As some of you may know, the team and I conducted this research on research several months ago, and we presented our findings at the Insights Association's next conference in early May of this year. We received such a great reception at the show, we decided to share an encore presentation via this webinar, so welcome everyone. My name is Lisa Wilding Brown. I am the Chief Research Officer here at InnovateMR, a global sampling and technology firm. I'll be leading the webinar today, and I'd like to introduce you to the rest of the team on our call. Michael Sanfelippo is Senior Vice President of Customer Development at Critical Mix. Welcome, Michael. And we also have Andrew Cannon, Executive Director of the Global Research Business Network. David Lau from Mindbody, he has the role of Head of Research. And last but not least, Bob Graff, Vice President of Research at MarketVision Research. So welcome, guys. Glad to have you here. First, a little housekeeping. Thank you. First, a little housekeeping. Let's make sure that everyone has themselves on mute. GoToMeeting should have you already muted, but just in case, go ahead and mute yourselves. Over on the right-hand side of the screen, you may submit questions, and the team and I will take a few minutes at the end of the presentation to field those questions. And please note, we are going to be recording the webinar, and we'll be sharing a link out to all attendees in the very near future, so keep your eyes peeled for that. So we'll just get right into this. A quick review of our agenda. We're going to start off by giving you some background on the GRBN, what it is and what its mission has been over the last year and a half to help with the participant experience and really sort of the impetus for why we're all here today. We'll go through the research on research partners that participated on this project with us. We'll go through the actual methodology and talk about some of the considerations and objectives for the research. And of course, the real meat of the webinar, we'll review our findings and provide you all with some key takeaways. So we're all very excited today. So thanks again for everyone joining. I don't know if you guys have all seen this out there, but anyone recognize this? It's clearly a survey that was not designed for the mobile participant. Yet this is a real study that fielded earlier this year. And I gotta say, it is time to stop the madness. Over the last year and a half, over 30 companies have worked together alongside Andrew Cannon and the GRBN, focusing on the participant experience and what we can do as an industry to protect really the lifeblood of our research, the participant. Today's research was born out of the GRBN's Participant Engagement Initiative, and our goal has been simple from day one. How do we get more people to participate in research? And what do we need to do to change as an industry? And it's been clear to many of us that there is a widespread reluctance to adopt a mobile-first strategy. We're surrounded by mobile devices. We see consumers checking their devices 100+ times a day, spending hours on their smartphones each and every day. And I was just looking at some research not too long ago from a mobile analytics firm called Flurry. Many of you may be familiar with them. And in a recent study, they found that U.S. consumers are spending up to a whopping 5 hours per day on their mobile devices. And they saw nearly a 70% increase year over year on mobile app usage. It's incredible. And I don't want to speak for everyone here, but as a sample provider, we're often asked to exclude mobile sample due to the survey design. Or Conversely, participants are included, however, their experience is really far from optimal, as you can see here in this screenshot. The GRBN has done a terrific job of banding together suppliers, agencies, and brands together to really focus on making the participant experience a better one. So thank you, Andrew, for leading the charge on that. And I think it really starts with all of us adopting a mobile-first design strategy. And we know that many in the industry feel reluctant to change since many of our current methods just don't fit nicely into a mobile box. And one such example is the Conjoints. So our team set out to show the industry that even the most complex designs can be translated for mobile. And so we don't miss out on truly representative results, because if we're not getting proper representation, what are we here for? And at the same time, we really are able to produce a positive experience that will really mitigate further attrition to our ever-shrinking participant universe. So Andrew's going to take the ball now and discuss GRBN's efforts in more detail. Andrew?
Thank you, Lisa, for that great introduction. Just a couple of words about the GRBN for those of you who don't know the organization. The Global Research Business Network was formed about 4 years ago by the major national associations and regional federations in the world, and now comprises more than 40 national associations, as well as the 4 regional federations around the globe. And the mission of the GRBN is really simple. It's to promote and protect the business of research. And one of those issues, as Lisa has talked about, really is, I suppose you could say everybody knows about the declining response rates, declining participation rates, and how that's affecting data quality. And this really is a risk to the future of the industry. And our research that we conducted last year showed that a poor user experience, if somebody has that when they participate in research, is a major cause of declining response rates. So when we did the research, as many as 7 in 10 people said that they'd had a recently bad experience taking an online survey. Now, I remember when I was back in the research agency side, that if we got that type of result for a research for a client, if people were satisfied visiting the bank or using the mobile phone service, for example, that just wouldn't be acceptable. The client would want to change. And as Lisa said, that as an industry, we've been too adverse to change. The world has changed around us, has become hugely mobile. And we as an industry, I'm afraid, are a bit stuck, maybe in the 1990s even. So we really do need to change, because when people have a bad experience, what they do is they do a few things. One is they think poorly about the brand or company sponsoring the survey, so it has a negative impact on the client. They also tend to break off the survey. They won't complete their way through a poor survey experience anymore. And they're likely also to refuse to take a survey next time they're offered to do so. So it's making it more and more difficult for us to get responses from this decreasing pool of people who want to take part in research. And it's just not good enough, I mean, that people really are the lifeblood of our sector, and we need to find ways to engage them to participate. So next slide, please. So what we've done is we've decided to bring together end clients, agencies, data collectors, as well as technology companies all across the globe to try and increase awareness of the issues, to try and inspire companies and the people that work to them to take action to change. And really that change needs to be meaningful. And one way to do that is really through focusing on this mobile first strategy, to making sure that when we're in the process of designing surveys, designing research projects, we really are thinking mobile first. So to drive this change, the first thing we've done is we've created a handbook. And there were over 30 data collectors, agencies and tech companies who contributed to the handbook. and we'll share a link with you afterwards to the handbook where you can download it. But it really is a great resource from experts in the sector on practical things you can do to change to create this better user experience, which really does increase participant engagement. In addition to that, we'd encourage you to use metrics to measure your success. So what type of experience do people have when they take your surveys? If you're not already collecting that type of data, start to do so. And it may be in fact that your sample provider already collects it, in which case ask them to share it with you so you can start to learn what type of surveys that you're doing give a great experience, which give a not so good experience, and perhaps which ones even give a poor experience. And then use these metrics to set yourself KPIs so you can really start to drive change within your business. Finally, we're going to continue to work with our partners to do more and more research in this area, and I think this one on Conjoint was a great start to that. So without further ado, I think I'll hand back to Lisa, who can tell you about the partners on this most recent research on research.
Great stuff. Thanks, Andrew. Really super passionate about everything that you've been doing through the GRBN, and we're really excited to be able to participate in that program. But I'd be remiss not to give a big shout out to all the wonderful partners that participated in this particular research on research project. UB Mobile, which is now, of course, part of Critical Mix, MarketVision, Innovate, Research for Good, and of course, Critical Mix themselves provided sample. So all the folks here really participated in a number of different ways, whether it be participating, getting the actual survey programmed and designed, or providing sample. We're really thankful for everyone's assistance on that front. So thank you all. And without further ado, I will pass the ball back to David, who's going to give us some background on Mindbody, which is really the client, the brand behind all of this research. And he can give you some background on what the firm does and really what the goals were for the research on his end. David?
Thank you, Lisa. Yeah, Mindbody is a lifestyle software company, and our mission at Mindbody is to help people lead healthier and happier lives by connecting them to the world of wellness. We are a mobile-first company, and what we mean by that is simply our software for consumers and businesses is designed first and foremost for mobile devices and our technology platform is purely SaaS-based, and it connects fitness and wellness industry. There's about 3.5 million consumers we connect on the consumer side to roughly 58,000 health and wellness businesses worldwide. Looking at our next slide here, one of the issues that we wanted to tackle with our Conjoint study here is really, we've heard about Uber's surge pricing, and surge pricing is simply Uber's way of increasing prices when a car service is in high demand in a geographic region. Mindbody has a similar type of algorithm, and we call it flexible pricing and or dynamic pricing. And one of the things that we want to get a better idea of is dynamic pricing, flexible pricing, in our case, specifically for application to drop in yoga classes. And so if we jump to the next slide, there's a little lag here. Yep. So there are 5 variables that we ran in our Conjoint study here, and we really wanted to find out, which of these variables, what combination of these variables have the most influence on a consumer's decision to book a drop-in yoga class. And so one of the variables that we looked at is time of day, day of week, the type of yoga being offered, how familiar a consumer is to a yoga instructor, and the price, of course, the price of the drop-in class. On our, is this, Yeah, so here we are. Sorry, I think. So key research objectives, number one, does booking behavior change based on price of the drop-in? What variables are the most influential in a consumer's decision to book that drop-in yoga class? And then finally, were there differences in booking behavior based on whether or not the consumer booked on a mobile device versus your traditional desktop device? And so with that, I'm going to hand this over to Michael, and he'll get us started on methodology.
Great. Thank you, David. I appreciate it. As Lisa mentioned, Mike Sanfelippo with Critical Mix, Dinah Bowen with UB Mobile ran the original panel at the GRBN, so I'm slotting in for her. As Lisa mentioned, we acquired UB Mobile recently, so I wanted to kind of jump into the methodology. When we start thinking about the best methodology to answer these questions, these business questions, we landed on a mobile conjoint. So we designed the conjoint to present consumers with several alternative yoga classes, including different combinations of the 5 variables that David mentioned. So that's type of yoga, day of week, time of day, instructor, and price. Jumping into the sample specs, we went with roughly half PC, half mobile, around 1,245 yoga enthusiasts. Consumers were asked to choose one offering or none if they were not interested in any of the options presented. And this task was repeated several times to understand each consumer's preference level for the various attributes. So we landed at roughly 50% incidence. We had a median length of interview of around 10 minutes, an average of about 13. We were in field for roughly 2 weeks. And on the sample side, we targeted age, income, industry, exercise frequency, yoga class attendance, and smartphone ownership. So, some of the considerations, right, when we were running the survey, survey participation on mobile is increasing, but getting a consistent balance of demographics can be challenging given the drop-off rates for certain designs and length of interviews. So a better design and engaging survey can help us ensure broad representation and mitigate drop-off. The question then becomes, can we bring a discrete choice to the mobile optimized surveys in a way that does not materially impact results? And this was the main challenge for us as a group. So with that, I'll pass this off to Bob. He's going to take the reins now and dig into our approach for the discrete choice as well as our final results.
Thank you, Michael. All right, so I'm Bob Graff with MarketVision. We do quite a bit of choice work at MarketVision, a lot of discrete choice, conjoint. For years, we've known that there are certain choice exercises that lend itself pretty well to mobile. Things like max diff are pretty simplistic. They could work pretty well. But when you get into the more complex range, due to the number of attributes, the different levels, the variations that you're trying to test, it doesn't run real well. It doesn't look great on something like a 5-inch phone screen, and it doesn't look consistent with what you're doing on a laptop desktop approach. So over the years, we've had to, in a lot of cases, decide to just exclude mobile participants and decide just to use laptop or desktop. And so, with that context in mind, we still have clients who will exclude mobile participants because of the type of the complexity of the exercise, the type of work we're doing, and that's still an appropriate decision. So understand that in this case, we're not saying that every exercise should be done this way, but we are saying there's more of an opportunity to start including mobile with some projects up and down the spectrum of choice. And one of the big questions is just how does the discrete choice exercise render? In our case, whether you use mobile first or how we talk about it in multi-platform, the idea is, does the question presentation look similar on a smaller screen as it does on a laptop or a desktop presentation? If it does, then there's potentially some consistency of data and it's more reliable and you can do it. But if it's vastly different and you've got different groups answering to different things, And in some cases, like what Lisa presented earlier with the question with the scales not even showing up on the screen, you've got to exclude those groups. So how does the discrete choice exercise render? But then what's the impact on data if we exclude mobile? And in this case, Mindbody is primarily a mobile platform. So from that standpoint alone, you want to include people who are mobile-heavy participants. But beyond that, there's a question of reach and representation. And with percentages growing, I think we see between 20 and 50%, depending on the sample source of mobile response. It's important to take a look at this. Okay, you've already flipped the screen. The discrete choice example here, just to show you how this looked, we had 4 options, 4 combinations presented on the screen. We put people through 8 tasks. They're presented with 4 options. Pick one that you would choose, and then there's I would not choose any of these. But you can see the desktop, laptop version on the left is very similar to what's on the mobile in a vertical display on the right at a 5-inch screen. So this is a fairly simplistic discrete choice exercise. It lent itself really well to the size screen and to presenting a consistent design. So what are the variables we looked at? We looked at the data by mobile versus laptop or desktop. We looked at some sample provider information. We had multiple partners here. And then we also looked at 2 groups. Group A was age 25 and up, owns a smartphone, attends group fitness classes one or more times a week, exercises 1 or more times per week, goes to yoga classes at least once every 2 weeks. Group B is a little bit younger, just the 18 to 24 group. Again, smartphone ownership, either in school or work. They're somewhat or very interested in attending fitness classes, and they also go to yoga classes at least once every 2 weeks. So as we think about these groups, we are working essentially with people who will describe themselves as yoga enthusiasts. And so some of the incidence information is within that target. But all of these people are interested and they participate to a certain level in yoga. Okay, so let's look at the attribute importance. We are, as Mindbody and yoga enthusiasts, some of these platforms, the way you manage your class billing is actually on just a monthly payment. So as we were thinking about price is a big part of the objective here. What kind of flexibility do we have? And you'll see, and on the left, mobile and laptop, and on the right, Group A versus Group B, that in terms of attribute importance, price is at the bottom. And so that actually, we believe that's because the type of classwork is designed where people are already paying a flat monthly fee, and then additional classes are priced in. But across the board, instructor is most important. I think if you take any of these yoga classes, and actually Mindbody also supports platforms for a variety of other fitness and wellness groups, like Orange Theory Fitness and some others, instructor matters. So if you're a participant, you know that if you like a certain instructor, you might be more likely to choose that slot. The second of importance was time, and then day, the type of yoga, and we had 5 different options, and then finally price. No real difference here between these group mobile and laptop or Group A and Group B. Slight fluctuations, but nothing terribly significant. All right, this is a pretty complicated slide. I hate to put these up, but what I wanted to point out here is the direction of the line. So this is showing the difference between mobile and laptop across those five attributes. The preference, like we just shared, was that instructor was first, and we had 3 options. So we had instructor you know and like, we had instructor you know and don't like, and then an I don't know the instructor, third option. So a little more. Little fewer options there, and maybe that's attributed to the steepness of the curve here. But if you look at time, day of week, type of yoga, and price, obviously lower price wins. Time of week, 6 p.m. was the winner. Day of week, the weekends are better. But what I want to point out here is that the lines across between mobile and laptop don't vary significantly. There's very little variation, and none of it is considered significant. They kind of mirror each other. Same thing with Group A and Group B on this slide. Taking a look at those 2, not a lot of variation, nothing significant here. You can just see that they do a good job of mirroring each other, regardless of the group. So That's a good thing to see from a design perspective. Okay, so let's take a look at the base case share preference. With these three combinations, we have 91% of the category included. You can see at the bottom, we chose $20 as the base case price. And you can look at the differences between mobile, laptop, Group A and Group B from the left. But overall, 91% of the category is participating with these three combinations. Next slide. So what happens to category growth when you decide to change the price? And this starts really getting into the heart of the question here. What matters what impact does price change have on these groups? And what you can see is mobile and laptop, if you take it down 50%, category participation goes up to 96 and change. If you go up 50%, it's 50% and change. But the difference here is that, or the data here shows that these groups are very consistent. Again, it's not, what we're looking for are differences in groups and opportunities to offer some variable pricing. And right now what you're seeing is a pretty consistent response by both mobile and laptop, as well as Group A and Group B to changes in price. Next slide. So the next question is there a group, and this is what Discrete Choice does for you. It allows you to dive into the data a little bit more and start teasing some things out. Is there a group of consumers who are more price sensitive? Is there an opportunity when you get into this to look at variations and identify a group or a segment that might actually provide some opportunity? And there's a price insensitive group that that really is where the opportunity is. You have a price sensitive group of 31%, price insensitive of almost 70%. And what you can see is the price sensitive group, a little bit of higher mobile participation, a little bit more in the millennials group, a little bit lower income, less participation, at least 4 times a week. So when you look at these two groups, the number of group activities they do in a week or how interested they are, they seem to be in a combination, a group that is definitely interested in exercise, but they're not participating at the highest level. While it didn't pop in terms of differences just on mobile versus laptop, the price sensitive group did lean a little bit more towards mobile, a little bit younger, a little lower income, and less engaged in some physical activity. So there's a little difference here when you start looking at the combinations of data to identify an opportunity group. So we take another look at the base case share of preference, and what you see based on price sensitive and price insensitive group is that the price insensitive group, because they do participate at a higher level, they are much more active. You're not moving the needle much when you make a change in price. These three now, if you look at the base case share, they are in the category at 95% with just these three options. And these are people that are just heavy consumers of these fitness classes. They participate a lot. They appreciate their instructors. They're heavily involved. Whereas the price sensitive group, with just these three, you see you've got 82%. So the category participation goes down, whereas the groups earlier, the combined total was 91% of categories. So the price sensitive group does drop out of the category a little bit when you get to the influence of price. Okay, so impact of price change. There is a sensitive versus insensitive group. Your opportunities for Mindbody as they roll out different pricing models or dynamic pricing is to look at this price insensitive group, the people that they're still participating regardless primarily of what you do with price. That's not why they're going. Movement in price didn't seem to influence their category participation. So there's a chance to move price up a little bit with this group, or to flex your model a little bit, and you can get some participation there. And by and large, these are the people that are much more involved in your category anyway. There may be some other opportunities with the sensitive group. You can see that if you jack up the price 50%, the category participation drops quite a bit, but these might be the people who are early into the category, but maybe they're still going to school, or maybe they've got other reasons why they can't afford to do it, or maybe they haven't met the right instructor or whatever. But by and large, you've got a group of 69% of them that fall into this price insensitive group where there is an opportunity. All right, so key takeaways here. When we were looking at this, we decided to, we were trying to determine what kind of opportunities there are. How does price, how does the impact of price vary across these mobile and laptop groups primarily, and then Group A and Group B? And, as much of a hypothesis as we might have had about price being a major change in and of itself across these two groups, it didn't really play out that way. But I think what we found was that there is a group that you can do some work with here when you dive in. Discrete Choice does a great job of highlighting those opportunities when you dive into the data. There is a group you can do something with. But the consistency, and from a research on research perspective with what we're trying to do and what Andrew Cannon with the GRBN and all of these other research on research efforts is showing, is that the consistency of data, mobile versus laptop or desktop, was great. So from a participation standpoint and involving mobile participants, the opportunity is there for this type of design, which again was relatively simplistic, but fit nicely on a mobile screen at 5 inches and a vertical display, as well as laptop and desktop, same presentation of questions, very reliable data. And I think that's a big win from this. That's kind of the story that came from this, is that there are opportunities to do discrete choice research with mobile participants. And the reach, we get into this a little bit, and I'll let Andrew take this from here, but the reach and the opportunity as these percentages increase, the access percentages among mobile participants, we really need to figure out a way to include more of these people. So taking a hard look at your design on different platforms is going to be crucial to whether it produces reliable data.
That's great. Thanks so much, Bob. I know, speaking for the group, we were so thrilled to see that there were consistent results across the two modes. I think we're all hoping for the best going into it, but it's safe to say to be on the other side of it and see that consistency across modes was just really thrilling. And one of the other things that we looked at, and I would encourage everyone that's doing survey research, is to understand the satisfaction of the survey participant as they participate in the wide variety of surveys that you must be running. And so, of course, we captured survey satisfaction here. We have to walk the walk and talk the talk. And Andrew's been great in really spearheading this effort on collecting survey satisfaction across different companies and developing benchmarks and looking at performance over time as you start to really ingest some of these design best practices that we've been talking about through all these different research on research efforts that we've been doing. But what I loved about the results from this study was that we had an overwhelming 99% indicate they loved the survey, and only 1% indicate that they disliked it. And those folks came from desktop. They weren't even from mobile, which is kind of a surprise too for us. We were thinking, it's on a smaller screen, we might see some negative feedback, and we didn't. We saw quite the opposite. People were really engaged and really loved the survey. The other thing that was really interesting that I wanted to share with the group too is that we actually saw a richer verbatim response coming from mobile than we did desktop. Again, kind of surprising results, because you think a person sitting at their desktop computer in front of their keyboard, they're able to type into that open-end response and add a lot of color and richness. But we actually saw more color, and this is the average character count that you're seeing here. So we saw 48.5 characters included on the mobile version versus 34.9. So I think that goes with the idea that the average mobile user is texting all day long. They're on their phone 5+ hours a day. So they're really well versed, and it's no longer a barrier. They're able and willing to give you a rich response. And then last but not least, something also I wanted to share with the group here too is some interesting data that Relevant ID provided us. And Relevant ID is a leading digital fingerprinting technology in the industry, and they're widely used by both sample and full service providers. They're owned by a company called Imperium. And based on the stats that they provided from their system, which was just recently in March of 2018, they found that across the top 10 industry suppliers, so those would probably include both full service agencies as well as some very large panel companies, 40% of inbound traffic going into the industry surveys is mobile. So, I mean, it's incredible. And it's not surprising because we know that consumers are using their mobile devices, but at the same time, we also know that the majority of survey inventory in our industry is not really optimized for mobile. So they're sort of in conflict with one another. And I think the important thing to point out here too is that if you are excluding mobile, you're cutting your feasibility nearly by half. And I know some providers, I've been in the space for over 15 years, some providers are as high as 60% mobile traffic, which is probably much closer to the norm these days. And so you have to ask yourself, how many surveys that you're designing are truly designed for a mobile audience. And so with that, Andrew is going to wrap things up for us and make a call for action. Andrew?
Thank you, Lisa. Yeah, really, I think this is great. Showing the practical implications and applications of how to do this for a conjoint study, I think is really the type of examples that we need to put out there to show that this can be done and needs to be done. But we all know how hard change is, and it's something we've struggled with over the last couple of years. We've done a lot of presenting at conferences, with a lot of webinars, and there's a lot of head nodding going on saying, yeah, we need to do this, we need to become mobile. And I think Lisa is fond of saying every time I see her that this year is the year of mobile, and then a bit deflated afterwards by saying, well, no, it's not really still. And that has to change. It's just not optional as we move towards 2020 for our industry to be non-mobile friendly. I hate to say that, 2020 non-mobile friendly. It just isn't possible. So in order to help change happen, the GRBN is setting up a coaching program called MarketVision, and I'm happy to say that we have the first group of companies actually going through that training program at the moment, of which with us today, InnovateMR, Critical Mix, and MarketVision are all part of that first group of companies taking the lead to be pioneers, to drive change, not only through their own behavior, but how they interact with their clients and their partners on this, because it is everybody's responsibility. And especially, we need to get the end clients engaged in this to understand, as I mentioned at the beginning, that, one of the major impacts that people have when they receive a bad experience is to blame the client, to blame the company or the brand behind the survey. And in today's world, where companies are super focused on their consumer connections, on their brand interactions, we cannot allow market research to be a negative brand impact or even a negative impact on the category. So even if the brand is hidden, and the survey's about insurance, it doesn't help that everybody who took the survey hates insurance companies for the next month. That makes the marketer's life so much more harder as they're trying to engage people with their category, with their product and their brand. So we as an industry have a responsibility to become a positive touch point, to create positive experiences. And the companies on the MarketVision program are really getting hands-on coaching and training to help them develop their systems, to help them change their processes, to help them work through how to create better user experiences and better participant engagement. So the call to action, as Lisa said, is really everybody to get in touch with us, become part of the solution. Don't just stand on the sidelines thinking this is somebody else's problem, this is somebody else's weight to lift. This weight will be much lighter for everybody if we're all lifting a bit of it. So hopefully that wasn't too much of a lecture or a preaching there, Lisa, but I'm passionate about this.
Absolutely, and I am as well. And I appreciate you and your fearless leadership over the last year and a half, Andrew. I think we've really made a great impact, and we have more work to do for sure. And I'm excited to get more and more folks involved and to really proliferate the message, because it's vital for the long-term viability of our industry. And it's I'm very, very thankful to have been part of this. Thank you guys so much for sharing your insights. I, for one, have had a blast working with all of you. And I think it's safe to say that we proved discrete choice studies can successfully be conducted on mobile. But of course, like all research on research, we answered some questions, but we definitely unearthed new questions along the way. So perhaps a phase 2 is needed in the future. But we actually do have some questions from the audience, so I think we'll take a few moments and answer some of those. Let's see here. So question from Sarah, maybe Bob, you can take this one. Did you see a higher dropout rate on mobile versus desktop given the conjoint exercise?
Yes, and that's a good question. No, we did not in this case, and I think the average interview length was 13 minutes, and I think it was because essentially we optimized the design. It was made it very easy, very easy, maybe very intuitive to get through the survey, and no noticeable drop off.
Yeah, no, I thought that was great to see as well, and it was sort of, I think, a surprise as we were going through the research, is that, okay, it's a bit more of a tasking, burdensome exercise on a mobile device and a smaller screen. Are we going to see a higher drop-off rate? And we found that, folks were really cooperative and also gave us great satisfaction ratings on the back end of the survey. So that was great to see. And another question in here, and Bob, you might want to take this one too. This is from Anthony. Do you think you would see similar results from a more general consumer audience? I think that's a really interesting question. I know we've had some side conversations about it. What do you think? Yeah, and I think you would. I don't think it's so much about the audience in this case as it is the design and some of the trade-offs you have to make. So, like I said, for this research, the design was pretty simplistic. It fit nicely on the screen. We were able to provide 4 product options, product combinations, and it rendered well. It really comes down to what you're trying to present. And, there are interview length challenges. Certainly mobile, it worked well for 13 up to 14 minutes. They're not going to last for 35 or 40 likely. But you could also, with more complex discrete choice designs, you could show fewer combinations on the screen, especially if you have images, in order to make something be presented in a way that you can trust the response, trust the data that's coming from it. You could lessen the number of combinations and then subject respondents to more tasks. But that's also not a great option in some cases too. So it's really about the design of the discrete choice and how that might render, and sort of the combination of elements to see if that makes sense. But it could absolutely work for a more general consumer audience. Great. Yeah, I think in each case, you're going to have to make trade-offs. And I think as an industry, some of our bad behavior is to sort of throw everything at the wall and almost sort of be data hoarders. We love to get as much information and pack as many questions as we can into a survey because it meets our goals and our objectives. And often we're, working with multiple constituents internally on our side that all have needs, all have questions they want answered. And so that's how the survey, I think, evolves from 10 minutes to 30 minutes. And I think as an industry average, we're probably around 23, 24 minutes, which really I think needs to change. So, there are trade-offs we have to make, and there are probably questions that you look in hindsight and say, I didn't probably need that. And so I think more of those types of discussions are really important. Here's another good question from Paige. Michael, maybe you want to take this one. What is the max length of interview I can do on mobile? What's your opinion?
Sure. Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, I think I've been doing this for 10 or 12 years, and obviously, as Lisa mentioned, the percentage of mobile has been steadily increasing. And in my experience on the critical mix side, I would say probably between 10 and 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes at the very max. I think with the UB mobile approach, which is the gesture-based surveys, which really is an enhanced design, makes things, I think, easier for the for the consumers, easier for the survey takers. I think you can push a little bit, but really, I think, from my experience, between 10 and 15 minutes is probably the max for the survey.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think a lot of it is driven by the incentive too. And I think as an industry, in fact, I was just on a panel at the IEX and we were talking about incentivization and how much we're really offering participants. And I think it's an important question for people who are designing their surveys to ask of their sample providers, what's being offered for this given survey, what kind of incentive is being offered, because I think there's been some bad behavior in our industry for sure. And I was chatting with Bonnie at the IX show, Bonnie Breslauer from Active Measure, and she was talking about the incentives, and she mentioned that, in her travels, she's seen incentives as low as 40 cents, and I've seen the same on my side. So, we need to be cognizant of what we're asking people to do and reward them appropriately. And so definitely be part of that process and ask those questions. Here's a question from Blake. Maybe David, you want to take this one. Why do you think the MR industry has been slow to adopt a mobile-first approach? What are your thoughts, David?
Oh, thank you, Blake, for the question. I'll start out by saying it's the inertia that we have in the industry for the last few decades. Started out with the CPG decades ago, and it's simply overcoming that inertia. To our credit, our industry has adapted to, I guess, a more smart approach to addressing. We've passed crossover where mobile devices have overtaken desktop devices being shipped out there, and so we have software out there. Some partners have software out there where they're able to recognize the device type and then render the display optimized for that device type. It's not perfect. I see it as a stepping stone to mobile-first technologies like what UB Mobile has and what Critical Mix has. Another thing I think we have to recognize is, with mobile devices, people taking surveys on mobile devices, we need to be smarter about how we survey respondents, consumers. We need to be a bit smarter in survey design. There are other techniques that we might want to start looking at, like progressive profiling, where, maybe it doesn't work so well for a conjoint study, but, where in the case of customers or consumers, where we kind of append information over multiple touch points or overall there are different interactions with them over time. So that's, things like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, that's great feedback. I think there's a lot of redundancy in our industry. We have a tendency to ask the same questions over and over again because we look at surveys in isolation from one another. And really, we need to think about what that whole consumer experience looks like. And I think, Andrew, you touched on something that was really important, that, we really need to start thinking about market research as a brand touch point. I think up until now, it's been sort of operating in a vacuum in a way. And like you mentioned earlier, a lot of companies will have unbranded surveys where the sponsoring company is not mentioned. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Obviously, you don't want to have any kind of bias introduced to the sample that's participating in the survey. But even if you don't reveal the brand, a lot of times respondents, they're clever. They can surmise who the sponsoring company is, or like you said, they can think that the category itself, if they have a negative experience, will sort of blame the whole category. So I think there's a real opportunity. I know from some research that we did last year, we tested out a few different kind of scenarios. And maybe, Andrew, you can talk a little bit about what we saw when we just did something as simple as thank respondents or provide a thank you message via video. Do you want to speak on that a little bit?
Yeah, happy to do so. I think a lot of the changes we need to make aren't, at the end of the day, very big changes, and they aren't difficult changes for us to implement. That the things that make a participant feel that the experience is relevant to them. It's really like having a conversation, really. I think that's the way we need to think of it again. That, when you meet somebody new, for example, when you talk with them for the first time at a party, you don't immediately go in and start asking, what you want from this relationship. You're interested in them, you're asking them what they think, how they feel. And we need to apply that same type of empathy to online surveys, really, to think of it more as conversation and how can we give value to people who want to participate above and beyond the financial incentive. So thanking at the end, the videos that you'll see in the handbook that we did, the thank you video from the client, was amazing. It was very simple, 30 seconds, and the participants loved it. If you can share that data, is another great way that you can engage the participant to feel that you're giving them value, to tell them, for example, what people who are similar to them, what are their attitudes like to the topic that you're discussing or having in the survey. So there's lots of little ways that we can tweak things to create a fantastic experience, but we also have to get the basics right. You know, Lisa, I think there's issues with scales, there's issues with grids, there's issues with long questions. One of the other things we did in the research on research was we flipped the questionnaire into a conversational, short, contexted text version, and the participants loved it again. You know, and the data didn't change. We got just the same conclusions to the client in 2/3 of the time in terms of the text used in the questionnaire. So we don't need to be laborious explaining things anymore. We can get short and sharp like people are used to online with their other engagements on a mobile device.
No, I think those are some great tips, and it was really interesting to see all the insight from that research on research. And I think you're right, Andrew. I think it's really about making super simple changes and really thinking about participants as real people, because that's what they are. They're people. And you have to sort of put yourself in the seat of a participant and ask yourselves, would I take this survey? Would I complete this? What would be my takeaway or my impression of the brand or the category? And, you know, and not sort of think, well, I'm jaded. I've been in the industry for 15, 20 years, so I wouldn't want to take it anyway. It's like really think long and hard about what it's like to be that participant. And I've always said, like, if this was really a real marriage, I think the participant would really break up with us as an industry. We're not doing our part. I've got some more questions. We do have a bit more time here. Here is a question. What was the age difference in the mobile and non-mobile groups? Did the sample include a robust sample of young males? So we did see a higher concentration of younger demos, younger people taking via mobile. So definitely reinforces the fact that, you know, millennials, younger folks are participating via mobile and prefer that as the device of preference. In this particular study, really focused on yoga enthusiasts, which obviously skew female. And I, mentioned this earlier. I think from our perspective, when you do research on research, yes, you answer some questions, but then you have new questions and new sort of theories that surface. And I think there definitely needs to be a phase 2. I think phase 2 would probably be something that's a little bit more general consumer and has a better spread between male versus female. One part of me thinks, yoga enthusiasts are really diehard, and maybe they had a really great experience and gave us great survey stat because they're so passionate about the topic. And I kind of want to disprove that theory by doing a phase 2. I don't know if anyone else in our panel here has opinions on that. Maybe Bob, if you want to share your perspective, what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think from this and other research, we've seen that certainly the topic lends itself to satisfaction. People want to talk about it. And to be fair, the team that we had on this project was also pretty passionate. We had 5 or 6 yogis involved at different parts of our company. So, people are more enthusiastic, and that lends itself to probably hanging on a little bit longer in a survey, or maybe skewed satisfaction scores. But overall the principles apply. But I agree. I think it would be neat to see what another version of this would look like. Different category, maybe less participation in the category.
Okay, I think we have time for one last question, and then we'll wrap it up here. What is the maximum number of attributes that can be fit onto one phone screen? Bob, I'd love your opinion on that. Well,
I'd love to give an answer, but it varies. you know, certainly we do everything from, like I said, simple max diff all the way up to complicated shelf set designs. And if you've got imagery in there, if you've got what are the different, how many numbers of attributes you're part of your product combinations, it really varies. I hate to give a non-response here, but I think the idea here is to look at what you have, consult with your research partners, your research providers, and you know, test it out. Put these up on a screen, see how it looks. Do you feel like it is essentially the same presentation of a question as you would get on a laptop? And if it does, then absolutely include it. Just because there is that reach representation and you know, making it more engaging for everybody, even the laptop users. So yeah, I don't know that there's a hard specific number. It really varies on what you're trying to test.
Yeah, I think you touched on something really critical that we need to do more of as an industry, is testing our own surveys and across different modes. And I think, you know, it's important. I see a lot of surveys in my travels where a lot is falling out of view. And so if you don't have the right randomization in place, making sure that every attribute gets a fair shot at visibility to the participant, then you have a, you know, potentially negative impact on your data quality. And the other thing too is you don't want excessive scrolling up and down, and certainly side to side scrolling is not, you know, as intuitive as up and down scrolling, and so that can certainly have a negative impact too. But you got to test. I think that's the key, and really put yourself in the shoes of the participant and understand what their experience looks like. So with that, we're almost out of time here, guys. I want to thank you all for participating. This has been absolutely such a thrill. I can't wait to contribute and work together again in the future. And I'd like to thank all the attendees for coming in. We didn't get to all of the questions, unfortunately, but we'll make sure you get responses, and we will be sharing a recording of the webinar along with the deck in the next couple of days. So keep your eyes peeled for that. And in the meantime, have a wonderful day, and thanks again for joining.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Lisa, for bringing us through this. Thank you.
Bye-bye.